From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Coming your way today from the Kansas Forest Service at K-State, Bob Atchison will share results from a recently completed aerial survey of the volume and condition of tree resources in Kansas. Specifically, Bob will talk about what the survey said about windbreaks in the state, many of which are sorely in need of renovation. Then from the Kansas Agriculture and Rural Leadership Program, Jill Zimmerman will talk about the activities of the current KARL class and the recruitment of the next class now underway. And on this week's edition of Milk Lines, K-State's Mike Brouk advises you dairy producers to use your milk fat results as a guide to making forage feeding adjustments. All that ahead on this Agriculture Today. Thanks for being along with us once again. You're listening to Agriculture Today. Well, anybody who's spent any amount of time across the Kansas rural countryside will fully recognize that the conservation tree plantings we know as windbreaks are a vital part of that landscape. A new survey that was conducted by, among others, the Kansas Forest Service here at Kansas State University has put together a portrayal of our windbreak system in Kansas. And we brought by, once again, Rural Forestry Program Coordinator, Kansas Forest Service, Bob Atchison, to tell us about this survey and what it shares as far as the condition and state of our windbreaks. This is, Bob, under what's called the Great Plains Initiative, and this is the second version of that initiative. What's that about?
Yeah, Eric, it's great to be here again and talking about the important resource of windbreaks. The Great Plains Initiative 2 is a continuation of an inventory of windbreaks in Kansas, Nebraska, and the Dakotas, and it first began in 2008 and was sponsored by USDA Forest Service. The most recent inventory was completed in 2019, and that simply helps us understand the trends and the changes that we've seen since that time in windbreak size and condition. GPI-2, which is what we call it short, created the first ever statewide GIS tree canopy layers for each state in the Great Plains using Trimble eCognition software with ArcGIS software and then 4-band digital aerial photos. These tools were collectively able to identify the windbreaks within each tree canopy layer.
So aerial technology, collecting the information. Why is this initiative important, Bob?
Well, as a lot of us know, back in the 1930s, at the height of the Dust Bowl, the federal government invested back then $13.8 million to establish more than 200 million trees and shrubs throughout the Great Plains in the form of the windbreaks that we still have today. But the green infrastructure that we have now exceeds 80 years of age, and it's in a state of decline both from age and from climate-related effects. So we have identified over 118,000 windbreaks in Kansas, and they comprise around 261,000 acres. And they stretch around 31,348 miles. To give you a picture of what we're talking about there, that would cross the state of Kansas over 76 times. Most of our windbreaks, however, really are fairly small. They only take up a little over 2 acres, and they usually don't extend more than 1,000 or 1,500 feet in length. So, they don't take up a lot of farm ground, and the great benefit of windbreaks is the extended protection they provide beyond their footprint, which is the distance and area that's at least 10 times their height on the leeward side and 2 times the height of the windbreak on the windward side. So in Kansas, that adds up to almost 1 million acres that windbreaks provide protection for livestock, croplands, and farmsteads.
They are prominent. We all know that. But as you indicated, Bob, a significant number of these windbreaks have some age on them. Many were planted during the Dust Bowl and are now declining because of natural causes, to put it that way. But there are numbers to substantiate that from this survey, you say.
I think it did, Eric. I think the inventory that we did suggests that around 45% of our windbreaks are in good condition, with 37% in fair and 18% in poor condition. Mm-hmm. So since 55% of our windbreaks are in fair to poor condition, it really suggests that there is a need to encourage our farmers and ranchers to renovate and to manage windbreaks before they lose their ability to provide protection. Fortunately, we have USDA conservation programs like EQIP that can help with the cost of renovating and establishing new windbreaks.
And that's part of a potential response here, what you're recommending to landowners, farmers and ranchers who might have an interest in renovating a windbreak or see the definite need for that. What is the process? What does renovation look like, to put it that way?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would encourage all of our farmers and ranchers to do is to take advantage of their local district forester. These foresters are located in 7 districts throughout Kansas and are available to provide on-site renovation advice and connect producers with EQIP cost-share assistance to get the work done. Contact information for our foresters is available on our Kansas Forest Service website at kansasforest.org, or producers are also welcome to call our state office, and that phone number is 785-532-3300. Again, that's 785-532-3300. Most of the renovation projects that we do usually include a complete row removal using heavy equipment, which is followed by replanting. Often producers will not remove an entire windbreak, but they'll leave their cedar trees in place until the newly planted trees are old enough to provide protection. There's other techniques that we use in renovation, which depends upon each separate windbreak that we come across. But those are some of the more common things that I see happening on the landscape.
And when you look at this survey once again, based on the results of it, you come to a conclusion, you say, about the opportunities or concerns that might be out there, Bob.
Yeah, they're there. I mean, 61% of our windbreaks in Kansas are farmstead windbreaks that are planted around homes and outbuildings to provide protection and aesthetics usually. About 26% are field windbreaks, and they reduce our wind-blown soil erosion and often provide crop yield benefits too. About 11% of our other windbreaks are planted for livestock protection. Since the first inventory, Eric, we've seen a decline in the good condition class of our windbreaks from 57 to 45%, and an increase in the fair to poor condition classes from 43 to 68%. What this all suggests is a gradual decline in the health and the functioning condition of our Kansas windbreaks and the ongoing need that we have for them to be renovated.
As far as the challenge broadly here to sustaining and managing windbreaks in Kansas, Bob, you say it starts with landowners putting a value on those as they think about renovation.
Yeah, it's really, it extends beyond windbreaks too, with all the 95% of our forest land in Kansas and our windbreaks too are privately owned. And so our effort is always to encourage our farmers and ranchers, to place value on those. And until we accomplish that, then the work we do will remain challenging. Windbreaks are generally removed because there's no perceived value. Research shows that direct economic benefits of windbreaks are not ranked very high by farmers and ranchers as reasons for owning a windbreak. But recent studies that we've had both in Nebraska and Kansas that have been led by Dr. Charles Barden, our extension forester, and his grad students found that winter wheat and soybean production can be increased significantly when they're protected by windbreaks, with average yield gains of 10 and 16% respectively. There's been long-standing research also that has proven windbreaks reduce soil erosion. citing one 2005 study by Dr. John Court, suggests that up to $97 million in savings can happen because of field windbreaks. I am most concerned about woody encroachment in our grasslands and how that will continue to affect our partnership with other natural resource professionals and our farmers and ranchers. We need their support, obviously, to be able to promote the establishment and the renovation of our windbreaks in Kansas.
Well, there's the call out to look at the state, the condition of those windbreaks, see if they're candidates for renovation or replanting. And for the latter, Bob, to slip in here quickly, the Conservation Tree Planting Program out of the Kansas Forest Service is just the ticket for supporting that project. Tree order forms for spring planting are out now, right?
They are, and people can go to our website that I've referred to earlier and check out what we have there. Conservation trees for spring tree planting are now available to the people of Kansas.
Look into that at kansasforests.org. Before we let you go, want to acknowledge as well, after over 30 years with the Kansas Forest Service here at Kansas State University, this is your last week. You're retiring at week's end, so thanks for all of what you've done for rural forestry here in the state of Kansas. Congratulations on the retirement, and hopefully you're looking forward to that.
Thanks, Eric. And back at you, I've so appreciated being able to have this voice to help accomplish the mission of Kansas Forest Service and try to serve the people of the state.
Your advocacy for our tree resources in Kansas, commendable. Many thanks, and the best of luck to you, Bob. Bob Atchison with us, Rural Forestry Program Coordinator, Kansas Forest Service, Kansas State University. Those are some of the results of the just completed Great Plains Initiative 2, what that survey shared in the way of the condition of our Kansas windbreaks. We'll be back with more. This is Agriculture Today. Welcome back. You're listening to Agriculture Today. Our aim on this segment is to bring you up to the moment on what's going on with a major educational program that's based at Kansas State University, and we've talked about it many times before. It's still rolling. The Kansas Agriculture and Rural Leadership Program. The president of KARL is with us now, Jill Zimmerman. Jill, lots of things under the KARL umbrella right now. But before we go any further, for those not initiated in what this organization and program is, would you cover that for us?
Absolutely. Thank you, Eric, for allowing us to be here today. So KARL stands for Kansas Agriculture and Rural Leadership. It's a 2-year program for folks in the state of Kansas that care about agriculture, care about leadership, care about their rural communities. So people apply to be a part of the age and range is from 25 to 55. There's up to 30 per class. And we spend 2 years covering the state of agriculture in Kansas. We travel to Washington, D.C., Gettysburg. Most recently, the class went to Lincoln, Nebraska, and visited the Engler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program. That was really engaging, very good. They'll also travel internationally. So they spend 52 days over the course of 2 years together studying and becoming inspired to make change at home and in our rural communities. And
participants include agricultural producers, folks involved in agribusiness and allied industries. It's a mix, right?
Absolutely, it's a mix, because that's really, I think, at the end of the day, the greatest benefit of being in KARL is the network. And so we know the challenges in our rural communities and in agriculture today are a lot broader than just the scope of having production agriculturalists in the class. Production agriculturalists make up a chunk of people in the class, but in the current class, we have folks that lobby for health care. We have folks that represent hospitals, just a variety of different backgrounds. But they all have one common theme amongst them, is just how they care for ag and they care for what happens in our rural communities.
That is the purpose and the intent of the program, to support both of those entities through building leadership. As far as the current class, you're in the midst of the 2 years, right?
Yep. We have finished year 1, and then COVID happened, and so we're in the midst of year 2. And so next week we're set to go to Pittsburgh. We've added new seminars. We've added new components to the curriculum. So we're pretty excited about the new elements that we've been able to include.
And will this class be able to take the traditional international tour, which is a keystone of this program?
Absolutely. So the work where we're at today is we will still be able to travel in March of 2022. And fingers crossed, we're going to travel to the United Arab Emirates March 20th through the 29th. The last class traveled to Cuba, and so that's just really that's a capstone of the program, and it really is a neat component that has always been a part of the curriculum.
Hopefully things will stay in place to make that happen after a long wait for this current class. One of the things we did want to mention among many is that you are soon to be recruiting for the next KARL class, and you say it's up to class number what?
Yeah, class 16. What number was yours, Eric?
It was class 4. So it's been a while, but that's testament to the longevity of the program. But explain the recruiting process and the applications that go with that.
Absolutely. So the application's available, and it's all online. And so folks make an application online. They will be available beginning January 1, and then we'll close the applications on April 1st. So folks, they can contact our office today if they have an interest in applying, and then we add them to our database, and they start to receive information and communication from our office so that they can learn a little bit about what we're doing and our travels and the seminars and things of that nature. So January 1 to April 1.
And prospective participants always wonder, well, what is needed? What sorts of criteria do they need to meet to potentially be part of a KARL class?
Yeah, the criteria is really pretty simple in some regards, Eric, but, the age range is 25 to 55. So folks that, are somewhere in that leadership journey are folks. And then, folks that care, folks that have a passion, folks that are driven to make change and to be the change makers we need in our state, because they go through a set of experiences that really kind of hopefully encourage them and inspire them. There's a lot of leadership that we weave into this set of experiences.
And they do have to be willing to make a time commitment because of the regular seminars that take place within the state, plus the trip to Washington, D.C., the international excursion as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's both a time commitment in addition to a financial commitment that each of the participants make. The time commitment is 52 days about 52 days over the course of 2 years. And then the financial commitment is $5,000 tuition that they can make 2 installments, so $2,500 each year for their participation in the program.
And that covers all costs of participation,
Absolutely.
Including travel, lodging, and so forth.
All traveling, yeah, airfare, bus, meals, lodging, it covers nearly everything.
And often folks will find that they can get support in the way of local sponsorship for their participation, should they qualify.
Absolutely. Yep. Many of the participants do seek support from folks in their rural communities where they live that, or their employers often help them with their tuition.
We'll repeat this, but remind us of the website that has all the information and the pathway to applying.
Yes, www.KARL, KARL program.com, KARLprogram.com.
Very well. I want to mention a couple of other things here, Jill, if we might. And recently, in honor of one of the founders of the Kansas Agriculture and Rural Leadership Program, the late Barry Flinchbaugh, a special phase of the program has been established. Tell us about that.
Yeah. And honoring Dr. Flinchbaugh and his involvement with KARL was critical. He was, without question, one of the early founders of the program back in 1989, Eric. Mm-hmm. They had worked to establish a program, but it really took Flinchbaugh's influence and leadership to make it happen. So every KARL class, including this current class, has listened to the Kings and Kingmakers presentation that Dr. Flinchbaugh had. And so with the support of his family, we've established the Kings and Kingmakers Fund so that we will always remember the influence that he had in KARL, Kansas agriculture, and if you think about just his influence in Kansas, it was huge. And so it's delightful to be able to honor him in that way.
And that fund will go to support the operations and functions of KARL and the opportunities for the members and participants?
Yes, absolutely.
So you can inquire about that as well at that website. But more broadly here, it is the end of the year. The program is a nonprofit entity. Therefore, any contributions to it would be tax deductible. And this is an opportunity for folks who would like to support the cause of rural leadership development to help out in that respect.
Absolutely. As those that are involved in philanthropy, end of the year is always an important time of the year. And I think it's especially important just in life in general and remembering those causes and things that are important to us. And so, we hope that those that might be inclined so make a gift to KARL, but also just encouraging people to remember those organizations that are important. Right. And there's many throughout the state that are very worthy, but leadership is something that we feel is very needed in our rural communities, probably more so today than ever before.
You can check that out as well at karlprogram.org. But just looking ahead to 2022, exciting times. This current class has its international tour and other things leading up to that, right?
Yeah. So next week we'll be in Pittsburgh, Kansas for a seminar, and then we go to Wichita, Kansas, and Hayes, and then they'll travel internationally. And
you have a good group of folks. You'd like to see a reloading with the new class to be named when?
Yeah. We will interview the first week of May, and then they will be announced the first Saturday of June. And so the current class, all classes are exceptional, and it's been a lot of fun to work with this current Class 15.
Excellent. And the current state of the program seems to be extremely stable and strong right now. Jill, your assessment of it?
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, but, it takes a lot of folks to make the KARL program work, and we're only as strong as our network. And so those folks that are able to help us in designing curriculum, making connections with influential people that can make us better people when we go home to our rural communities and live and work. So we truly thrive on having strong relationships with a lot of people. That is what makes us better.
Yeah. Congratulations on your part in leading the KARL program and helping organize all of this that is entailed in it, and we appreciate you providing an update, Jill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jill Zimmerman is the president of the Kansas Agriculture and Rural Leadership Program. It is based here at Kansas State University, and it continues to create and accomplish great things in the cause of developing leadership for tomorrow for agriculture in the state as well as our rural communities all around Kansas. Neglected to mention earlier, if you are interested in supporting KARL, you can do so with a grain donation before year's end. By contributing a crop to a charitable organization like KARL, you can, of course, avoid including the sale of that cash crop in your income reporting for this year, and you can still deduct the cost of growing the crop if you're on a cash basis. If you'd like to know more about a grain donation to the KARL program, they outline it fully there on that website, KARLprogram.com. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we will return with still more for you in a moment on the K-State Radio Network. You're tuned to Agriculture Today, and time once more for another edition of Milk Lines, featuring K-State Research and Extension Dairy Specialist Mike Brouk, and with more input on dairy herd nutrition management, rolling into and through the winter, and in this case, using a primary indicator of milk quality as the thing to track here. Mike?
Today I'd like to visit with our Kansas dairy farmers concerning the fat tests that you might be seeing in your dairy herd. As we approach this time of year, one of the things that we have to consider is, are our cows producing as high a fat percentage as we would like to see? A lot of you have probably been through some changes in corn silage. You switched from your 2020 crop to your 2021 crop, or you will be switching to the 2021 crop soon. And as you make those changes, a lot of times there are some things that change in the composition of the corn silage and should also result in some changes in your ration. So this is a time where you really need to spend some time with your nutritionist, and it's probably also very important to do some additional forage testing. Some of the key things you need to be looking for as you test your forages is the actual starch content of that forage, and then also how quickly it degrades. A third factor that you need to take in consideration is the digestibility of the fiber. the NDFD, or the UNDF if you want to look at the undigestible fraction, but the rate of fiber digestion is also important. Again, this is a pretty complex system that we have to evaluate as we look at our cows, see their response, and then make corrections. And again, your nutritionist needs to be at the center of this as you walk through this in the next couple of months. Generally, what we see is a reduction in fat test. Maybe not tremendous, but maybe you were running, say, a 3.9 if you're on a Holstein herd, and all of a sudden now you notice that your fat test is only running 3.7. These couple of tenths change are likely due to changes in starch content or starch availability and or the digestibility of the NDF fraction of the fiber. So, if you're seeing these sorts of changes, you might want to get with your nutritionist. In severe cases, we will see cows start to go on and off feed, and in this case, we need to take action very quickly. The other situation that you sometimes see is actually not enough starch. In certain cases, we may see actually a reduction in the starch content that we find in our corn silage. I don't expect that in most areas this year, as we had adequate rainfall in most of our growing areas. However, if you do have corn silage that contains less starch than what your 2020 crop did, it will be necessary to add additional corn grain in order that we may maintain milk production levels. So if you've seen a slide in milk production but no change in fat test, that may be an indication that you need to evaluate whether or not you're feeding enough starch to your dairy herd. This is Mike Brouk with K-State Research and Extension, encouraging our dairy farmers to carefully evaluate the starch content and availability of their new corn silage.
As always, Mike, many thanks to you. And just to remind you dairy producers of resources that you are invited to use on the K-State Animal Sciences and Industry webpage, they've a series of dairy enterprise budgets for your use. Several tools here to take advantage of. There's a business analysis component to that, helping you figure out which financial tools will benefit your dairy operation. Then they have enterprise budgets broken down by size of the herd, as follows for 100 lactating cows, a 600 lactating cow herd, then up to 2,400 lactating cows in the herd, one enterprise budget for freestall operations, the other for dry lot. And there is an enterprise budget as well for raising dairy heifers. Those budget tools can be quite handy, and you can find them at asi.ksu.edu and look for the Dairy tab toward the left-hand side of the page, asi.ksu.edu. And our time is away once more. Thanks to you for listening in. Eric Atkinson for Agriculture Today, over the K-State Radio Network.